When money collapsed and trust in institutions evaporated, American families were forced to rethink what security actually meant. Banks failed without warning, foreclosures happened overnight, and theft rose sharply in both cities and rural areas. Ordinary households adapted fast, quietly developing layered methods to protect cash, tools, documents, food reserves, and trade goods. Before we get into it, if this kind of grounded, real-world survival history matters to you, subscribe to Battlefield of Survival, like the video, and leave a comment with what period you want us to cover next. Now, let's get straight into how people actually protected what little they had. Families quickly learned that banks were no longer safe storage. By 1930, bank runs were common, and by 1933, over 9,000 banks had failed. Families stopped trusting centralized storage almost entirely. Cash withdrawals became routine, and savings were converted into physical assets or hidden currency. Money was split into multiple stashes instead of kept in one place. A portion might be hidden in the house, another buried on the property, and another carried discreetly. This reduced total loss if one stash was discovered or stolen. Today, the same principle applies when diversifying storage of cash, backup cards, and emergency funds, instead of relying on a single account or location. Homes were turned into layered concealment systems. Depression-era homes contained dozens of improvised hiding places. Floorboards were lifted and replaced loosely. Hollow curtain rods, stovepipes, and false bottoms in drawers became common. Mason jars filled with coins were hidden behind walls or beneath loose bricks. Some families hid valuables in plain sight by disguising them as trash or useless clutter. Old coffee tins filled with nails often held gold coins at the bottom. Today, the lesson is simple. Concealment beats complexity. A cheap container hidden intelligently often outperforms expensive safes that attract attention. Rural families relied heavily on land-based hiding. Farmers and rural households had an advantage space and soil. Valuables were buried in marked but discreet locations such as fence posts, tree roots, or beneath livestock troughs. Some families mapped these locations mentally rather than on paper to avoid leaving evidence. Food stores were also divided between root cellars, barns, and secondary caches away from the house. This prevented total loss from fire, theft, or foreclosure. Modern survivalists can apply this by using distributed outdoor caches rather than keeping all supplies in one structure. You know, important documents were treated as high-value assets. Things like birth certificates, land deeds, insurance papers, and ration cards, well, they were often more valuable than cash itself. Families would wrap these documents in wax paper, oilcloth, or even seal them in glass jars, all to protect against moisture. And documents were usually hidden separately from money, just to prevent a total loss if something went wrong. Some families even stored copies with trusted relatives in other towns, just in case. Nowadays, this translates directly into keeping physical backups of your critical paperwork stored in multiple locations, not just relying on digital scans. Community trust networks, they quietly replaced formal security. In many neighborhoods, you'd see informal watch systems spring up. Neighbors paid attention to unfamiliar faces, shared warnings, and quietly protected one another's property. In ethnic enclaves and rural towns, Valuables were sometimes stored temporarily with clergy, shopkeepers, or relatives who were less visible targets. This wasn't charity, it was mutual survival, plain and simple. The modern equivalent, really, is trusted redundancy, sharing responsibility with people you know well, instead of relying solely on systems. Firearms and tools were secured discreetly, never put on display. During the Depression, theft of tools and firearms increased sharply since both had real trade value. Families hid weapons unloaded, wrapped in cloth, and tucked away in non-obvious places, like attic insulation, behind false walls, or even inside farm equipment. Tools, too, were often stored inside living spaces rather than in sheds, especially during those hard winters. The takeaway today is pretty straightforward. High-value gear shouldn't be stored where thieves expect to find it, and, well, visibility equals vulnerability. Everyday objects were used as camouflage. Valuables were hidden inside items that would never be searched. Flour sacks concealed jewellery sewn into seams. Mattresses held coins stitched into ticking. Children's toys were hollowed out. Even soap bars were carved and remoulded to hide small items. This method relied on psychology, not locks. Thieves searched furniture, drawers and safes, not mundane household objects. The same thinking applies today when hiding small valuables inside items no one considers worth stealing. Mobility was treated as a form of security. Some families prepared to move quickly if eviction or violence became likely. Portable valuables were prioritized. Coins, tools, firearms and documents. Everything else was considered expendable. Go bags didn't exist by name, but the concept absolutely did. Families kept items bundled and ready, often hidden near exits. This principle remains essential for modern preparedness. Security includes the ability to leave with what matters most. Knowledge of concealment was passed quietly, not written down. Parents taught children where things were hidden and how to retrieve them safely. Instructions were given verbally and often only when necessary. Written records were avoided to prevent discovery. This ensured continuity if adults were arrested, displaced, or killed. Today, families should still ensure trusted members know where critical resources are, without relying entirely on written instructions. Why this still matters now? The Great Depression forced people to confront reality without illusions. Security was physical, decentralized, and human. Families survived by thinking like risk managers, not consumers. Apply these lessons today by distributing assets, hiding intelligently, trusting selectively, and preparing for mobility. If you value serious survival history and lessons that still apply, subscribe to Battlefield of Survival. Share this video with someone who takes preparedness seriously, and leave a comment with what you want covered next. This knowledge was earned the hard way. Don't let it disappear.